So we were reading the catalog of the fallen angels, and we had Milton had described Dagon, who was half fish and half man. Now let us follow the text from line number 467. So we read about Dagon and where his temple was situated, and after Dagon now comes another false or fallen angel called Rimmon. Him followed Rimmon, whose delightful seat was fair Damascus, on the fertile banks of Abana and Pharpar, lucid streams. So here Milton is talking about another fallen angel. His name is Rimmon, and he was worshipped in Damascus. Damascus, of course, we know as modern Damascus, but he was worshipped there earlier in the earliest times, and on the fertile banks of these two rivers, which were known as Abana and Pharpar. So, as we can see here, these were beautiful lucid streams, and obviously the waters of these lucid streams watered Damascus, and it was a very fertile land. He also against the house of God was bold. A leper once he lost and gained a king. So Milton is saying that Rimmon was also against, he rebelled against the house of God. He was one of these false gods. He was worshipped as a god in Syria, that is Damascus, and it was his temple was situated in the beautiful city of Damascus, which lies between the two rivers, Abana and Pharpar, with their transparent waters. Lucid streams means transparent waters. And he was also bold enough to defy the true God. And his name is linked with the story of a leper. A leper, once he lost and gained a king. So this leper actually is called Naaman. This leper is called Naaman, and uh, Naaman. He was a Syrian general um, who was afflicted with leprosy. So this particular leper that is referred to here, a leper was once and gained a king. He was a Syrian general called Naaman, and he asked um the prophet Elisha to cure him of leprosy. So the story is like this. Uh, you know, as the Milton refers to these people, the false god Rimmon, he was linked, his name was linked with the story of the leper Naaman. Naaman was a Syrian general who asked the prophet Elisha to cure him of leprosy. So the prophet who had supposedly who had the power of curing these lepers. So he was asked by this leper. When Elisha told him to bathe in the Jordan, he at first refused, saying, "Are not Abana and Pharpar, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel?" So Ahaz, his sottish conqueror, whom he drew God's altar to disparage and displace for one of Syrian mode. So he was persuaded to bathe in the Jordan and he was cured of his leprosy. And in gratitude for his cure, he deserted Rimmon and worshipped Jehovah. That is who was the true God. So Rimmon lost Naaman, who was a leper. So a leper once he lost. So that leper is Naaman, Naaman, the Syrian general who was cured of leprosy by Elisha, Elisha, who was a prophet. And he did not worship Rimmon anymore. So he started to worship Jehovah. So Rimmon lost Naaman, but he gained for his worshipper the king Ahaz, his stupid conqueror. So the king Ahaz is the king. Sottish means stupid, whom he drew God's altar to disparage and displace for one of Syrian mode. So he persuaded Ahaz to consider God's altar as of no value or importance and get it replaced with his own altar and to build that altar after the Syrian pattern. So that is the story. Whereon to burn his odious offerings and adore the gods whom he had vanquished. So there Ahaz made his hateful offerings and worshipped the very gods he had conquered. So this is the story that the poet refers to here in connection with this false god Rimmon. So I just remembered this story, the story of the leper Naaman and the prophet Elisha, who had cured him, and in gratitude, Naaman did not uh, discontinued his worship of Rimmon. He started to worship Jehovah. So Rimmon lost this leper's, you can say worship, his obedience, but he gained the foolish king Ahaz. So after Rimmon, Uh, after these appeared a crew who under names of old renown, Osiris, Isis, Horus, and their train, with monstrous shapes and sorceries, abused fanatic Egypt and her priests. Now, Milton refers to some other gods. Now, this word crew, C-R-E-W, as you can see here, a crew who are the names of old renown. Uh, so Milton uses this word crew in a very derogatory sense, not in a very good sense, not in a positive sense. So he wants to use this word to describe Satan and his followers. So all these fallen angels were the followers of Satan. So after this appeared a crew who under names of old renown, that is, they were known, well-known, old renown, Osiris, Isis, Horus, and their train with monstrous shapes and sorceries abused fanatic Egypt and her priests. So Osiris was the sun god, representing the principle of good, and he was killed and cut into pieces by his brother, who represented evil and darkness. And the scattered pieces of Osiris's body were sought throughout the world by his wife Isis. When she found all the pieces, she buried them, and he rose from the dead. So this is the story. And Horus was their son. So Isis was represented with the horns of a cow, and Osiris was worshipped in the shape of a bull. So these actually refer to these monstrous shapes, meaning they had the forms of animals, of bulls, cats, and dogs, under which shape the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, worshipped their gods. So the brutish forms of the gods were due to the fact that they, in order to escape from their enemies, the giants, they were forced to wander about disguised as animals. They took the shape of different animals, bulls, cats, cows, like that, and they were worshipped in such forms. Monstrous shapes, meaning brutish forms. So these are all Egyptian gods: Osiris, Isis, Horus. Fanatic Egypt, obviously, fanatic Egypt means the very uh, priests, the ancient Egyptian priests who were worshipping them. They were ardently, very eagerly worshipping them. To seek their wandering gods disguised in brutish forms rather than human. So they were disguised in these the shapes of animals because they wanted to escape from the persecution of the giants. Nor did Israel escape the infection when their borrowed gold composed the calf in Oreb. So these are again references how, uh, as we can see here, he is now referring to the Israelites after the Egyptians. Now, during their years in the wilderness, after leaving Egypt, the Israelites made an image of a golden calf and worshipped it. So, not did Israel escape, means escape the infection. The infection means this uh, idol worshipping the false gods when their borrowed gold composed the calf in Oreb. Uh, so, this place called Oreb. There they made an image of a golden calf and they started worshipping it, that calf in Oreb. And this was made by the Israelites in Oreb. And the rebel king doubled that sin in Bethel and in Dan, likening his maker to the grazed ox, Jehovah, who in one night when he passed from Egypt marching, equaled with one stroke both her firstborn and all her bleating gods. So here it is said that the Israelites had created this image of one golden calf, but the as we can see, the story of this person called Jeroboam, Jeroboam, who rebelled against King Solomon's son, whose name was Rehoboam, Rehoboam. I understand that all these names are very confusing for you, but just in order to explain this passage, I am I have to, uh, you know, uh, talk about these. Just a moment, I will get back. Okay, so let us get back to the explanation. So these names are very confusing, but you have to just remember these names in order to understand the references. So as we can see, this person called uh, Jehoboam, actually he rebelled against Rehoboam, who was the son of Solomon, King Solomon, and he made himself king over the greater part of Palestine. So now, as you can see here, in this description. And the rebel king, that is why he's called the rebel king, that is Jeroboam, Jeroboam. And he was the rebel king. He doubled that sin in Bethel and in Dan. So he doubled that sin, meaning the Israelites had created one image of that golden calf, but he created two images, two golden calves. And he set up one in Bethel and the other in Dan, which were the key cities of Samaria, Samaria. So these two cities, Bethel and Dan, there this rebel king Jeroboam had uh, established two statues or images of the golden calf. So as you can understand this, kind of reference, Milton calls him a person who doubled that sin, likening his maker to the grazed ox. So obviously, Jeroboam changed God into the similitude of an ox that eats grass. Jehovah, and who in one night, when he passed from Egypt marching. So Jehovah, uh, the God of Israel, he, on the night when the Israelites made their escape from Egypt, he slew all the firstborn children and also the firstborn cattle of the Egyptian. So bleating is effectively a kind of a contemptuous adjective. All the bleating gods, meaning the animal gods. So obviously you understand this reference, I hope, from Egypt marching, equaled with one stroke both her firstborn, that is the firstborn children and the firstborn animals. So this is the story of this false god called Rimmon. So a lot of things are uh, told here. And after that, these three gods and two gods and one goddess, Isis. So the story of the how the Israelites made the golden calf and Jeroboam made the two golden calves. So that is uh, told here. Now comes another god. Belial came last, than whom a spirit more lewd fell not from heaven, or more gross to love vice for itself. Now Belial, like Mammon's reference will come later. He is vice personified, and the account of his power and cult is therefore quite different. In the Hebrew language, Belial is an abstract noun meaning profligate wickedness or worthlessness. So he is called to be a worthless and very lewd kind of a god who loved vice for itself. To him no temple stood or altar smoked. So there was no temple or altar in his name. So he loved vice for its own sake, and therefore he did certain vicious acts. And to him, in his honor, there were no temples and no offerings were offered. Yet who more oft than he, in temples and at altars, when the priest turns atheist, as did Eli's sons, who filled with lust and violence the house of God. So here he is referring to the two sons of the priest Eli, who became wicked and they practiced wicked deeds. So Eli was the priest at Shiloah. It is referred to here, a priest, when the priest turns atheist, so he turns into a non-believer. as did Eli's sons, who filled with lust and violence the house of God. So he defiled the sons of Belial, he defiled the temple of God with lust and violence. In courts and palaces he also reigns, and in luxurious cities, where the noise of riot ascends above their loftiest towers. So, though Belial did not have any temple to call his own, actually he can be found in all the unholy places. He is a devil who is more often present not in temples or in altars, but in the places where these immoral practices are being done, and the wicked priests and the people of the wicked people of these cities and palaces where they are reigning. And as Milton says, he is more often than not present uh, in courts, that is in some courtiers, kings, princes, queens, and all the lewd people of cities, where the noise of revelry, insult, and debauchery is heard above their highest towers. So the noise of merrymaking and uh, debauchery, uh, and injury and outrage, So obviously, the streets are plunged into all kinds of outrageous acts. And when night darkens the streets, then wander forth the sons of Belial, flown with insolence and wine. So the drunkards and the insolent people who defy the true God. At night they roam around the street. Witness the streets of Sodom, and that night in Gibeah, when hospitable doors yielded their matrons to prevent worse rape. So here there is a reference to Belial, like Mammon, he is vice personified, and the account of his power and cult is therefore quite different. So Belial can be understood as a proper noun, which Milton personifies, makes him a kind of a personification and patron of lust. And Milton, actually, he is showing his puritanical hatred of the kind of practices that were there in the court of Charles II, and the dissipated life of the upper class people in the towns and cities during that time. He will do so, Milton will allude to these luxury and vice in courts in books 4, 5, 7. And he, in the description and in luxurious cities where the noise, he gives us further information about his personal likings and dislikings. So as you can see here, flown means filled to overflowing, flown with insolence and wine. Now witness the streets of Sodom. In the streets of Sodom, these can be all these things were seen. Witness meaning the poet is asking the readers to look at what happened in the streets of Sodom. And that night in Gibeah, so the streets of Sodom bear witness to this. And that night in Gibeah, hospitable door means hospitable house, hospitable inmates of the house. So yielded their matrons to prevent worse rape. So there was this incident of how the women were molested and all those. These were the prime in order and in might. The rest were long to tell, though far renowned. So It would take a long time to recount all these lustful or these grisly tales of the sons of Belial. So Milton is not going to recount all these things. So as we can look at this translation, English, modern English, the riotous behavior. So the house which had given hospitable shelter to these all these insolent people, obviously uh, all these sons of Belial, they were kind of you can say uh, indulging in all kinds of lustful activities. So Milton does not think it fit to devote to them the large space in his poem that would be required to describe them adequately. So that is what he's saying. They owe their renown to the greatness of the Greek poets who had celebrated them. So Milton has given the first place to the heathen deities of Syria and Egypt because they were a part of the history of the Israelites. The Israelites were the God's chosen people, but they stand out in wickedness and corruption against the background of true religion. And they were identified by Milton with the fallen angels and as with the enemies of God. So the description of all these Greek and Roman pagan gods who have been made into fallen angels by Milton, this has a romantic effect. Their evil natures are brought out. Emphasis is sometimes on the beautiful and remote landscapes, the description that we get here. And obviously, we come to the end of this the catalogue of the fallen angels. Now, Milton is talking about the history, kind of, here. The Ionian gods of Javan's issue held gods, yet confessed later than heaven and earth their boasted parents. Javan was the fourth son of Noah's youngest son, Japhet, and so Javan was the fourth son of Noah's youngest son, Japhet, and he was supposed to be the ancestor of the Greeks. So the Ionian gods means the Greek gods. Ionian, it means Greek. Ionian actually is one section of the Greek people. The Ionian gods of Javan's issue. Issue means children. Supposed to be gods by Javan's issue, the Greeks. Yet confessed later than heaven and earth their boasted parents. Supposed to be God by Javan's issue, the Greeks, and they were thought to be gods because of their celebrated parents. Titan, heaven's firstborn, with his enormous brood and birthright, seized by younger Saturn. So that though Titan was the eldest son, his younger brother Saturn obtained the sovereignty and held it until he found like measure from Jove. He from mightier Jove, his own and Rhea's son like measure found. So Jove was Jupiter, the king of the gods. He is Jupiter, and he overthrew his own father, Saturn. He was deprived by his own son. Rhea was the wife of Saturn and Jupiter's mother. Just as he had before deposed his elder brother of his power, Titan. So Jove or Zeus then ruled in Olympus, and the defeated Saturn fled to Italy. So Jove usurping reigned. These first in Crete and Ida known, thence on the snowy top of cold Olympus, ruled the middle air, their highest heaven. So Ida or Ida was the mountain in Crete where Jove was born and brought up in secrecy, owing to the prophecy that he would overthrow his father. So he was brought up there. And Olympus is the mountain range from the Salai, Sally, and Macedonia. It was supposed to be the abode of Zeus and the other Greek gods. And its summit is covered with perpetual snow. There is snow always. That is why it is called cold Olympus. Ruled the middle air. Ruled the middle air, the ordinary atmosphere of the earth, as opposed to the ether or the empyrean kingdom. It is called the middle air because it is midway between the earth and true heaven. Midway between the earth and true heaven. So that is why it is called the middle air. Their highest heaven. So it is characterized, this middle air is characterized by clouds and vapors and rain that is formed there. And then, or on the Delphian cliff, or in Dodona, and through all the bounds of Doric land. So it reaches to the tops of the highest mountains, and it was supposed to be the usual dwelling place of Satan and the evil spirits after the fall of man. So it was thought to be the highest the false gods could aspire towards heaven, the middle layer. The Delphian cliff, this was the site of the famous shrine, an oracle of Apollo, on the southern slope of Mount Parnassus, Parnassus. So the Greek god Apollo, the son of Zeus or Jupiter. So there was his shrine there. Dodona was the site of a famous oracle of Zeus. The Doric land is Greece, and through all the bounds of Doric land, throughout Greece. Or who, with Saturn old, fled over Adria to the Hesperian fields. Saturn, after his overthrow by Jupiter, he fled to Italy, where he reigned and established the Golden Age. The Hesperian fields, it was called by the Greeks the western of Hesperian land. So it is Italy, Hesperian fields. Fled over Adria. So this place, Adria. And o'er the Celtic roamed the utmost isles, o'er the Celtic land. So Milton says that some devils in alliance with Saturn wandered after their defeat by Jupiter over Gaul, the Celtic land, modern France, to the utmost isles, Great Britain and Ireland, and there established idolatrous religions. So some of the devils, they joined Saturn after his overthrow. All these and more came flocking. So there were innumerable fallen angels, but with looks downcast and damp, yet such wherein appeared obscure some glimpse of joy. To have found their chief not in despair, to have found themselves not lost in loss itself. So these were the crew of fallen angels. So Milton now finishes describing the fallen angels. All these and more. So he's not going to name all these fallen angels, but they actually were very downcast. They were in a very sad and gloomy mood. But still, it is seen that they had some amount of, some quantity of glimpse of joy. Why? Though they were obviously very sad because of the loss of heaven and their defeat at the hands of God. Yet such wherein appeared obscured some glimpse of joy, to have found their chief not in despair. So Satan was not in despair. He was calling them to rally behind him, to have found themselves not lost in loss itself. So, not lost in loss itself, it's an example of oxymoron. So, obviously, they were delighted to find their chief Satan still there, which on his countenance cast like doubtful hue. So the same expression of joy combined with sadness that shone in the eyes of the devils also lit up the eyes of Satan. So Satan was, at the same time, he was hopeful of regaining heaven's seat of heaven, and at the same time he was feeling very miserable. Likewise, his followers, the fallen angels, they also reflected the same kind of emotion, doubtful hue, color. But he, his vaunted pride, soon recollecting with high words that bore semblance of worth, not substance. So Satan did not, like his followers, allow himself to be overpowered by depression, but immediately began to speak words of encouragement, with high words, words of encouragement that bore semblance, which resembled of worth, not substance. So obviously he wanted to encourage them. It was uh, a speech that he wanted to address to them, gently raised their fainted courage. So the fallen angels had been lying stupefied on the burning lake of hell. But now, after hearing Satan's words, encouraging words, they slowly started to feel courageous and dispelled their fears. So their fears were removed. Then straight commands that at the warlike sound of trumpets loud and clarions be upreared his mighty standard. So his mighty standard, his banner, he upheld that banner high into the air, and with commands and the sound of war, the sound of trumpets, loud sound of trumpets and clarions, that proud honor claimed Azazel as his right, a cherub tall. So Azazel was the standard bearer. He was one of the fallen angels, a cherubim, who forthwith from the glittering staff unfurled the imperial ensign. So this Azazel, uh, the glittering banner that Satan, it was Satan's banner. He unwind the imperial ensign, the standard, which full high advanced, shone like a meteor streaming to the wind, with gems and golden lustre, rich emblazed. So it was raised, and it was not moved forward. Advancement raised here. So obviously, it was looking like shone like a meteor in the sky, in the heaven, and obviously streaming to the wind with gems and golden lustre rich emblazed. So it was full of precious, you know, precious stones, gems, and it was full of a shining golden color or brightness that is called here lustre. So Azazel took up this standard of Satan. Seraphic arms and trophies, all the while sonorous metal blowing martial sounds. So seraphic arms, meaning the coat of arms of the seraphim, the highest order of angels, and trophies are the symbols of victory, consisting of spoils taken from conquered foes. So obviously, there were certain trophies that they carried along with the arms or the weapons. Metal is metal trumpets, the metal trumpets, sonorous metal trumpets. Martial sounds, warlike songs were played, or music, warlike music was played. Martial means warlike. So the fallen angels gathered under their leaders, whom Milton has described one by one, and all these, you know, each of these fallen angels, they had their armies, separate armies, innumerable angels who were their followers, and as Satan addressed them, they all came together and raised the standards. Actually, Azazel was the fallen angel, who cherubim, who raised the standard, at which the universal host upsent a shout that tore hell's concave and beyond frightened the reign of chaos and old night. So this is an instance of pathetic fallacy. So human feelings are attributed to the reign of chaos and night. Night is called old because darkness existed from eternity before the creation of the world. So a shout, the universal host, meaning Satan himself, he shouted that reverberated through the whole of hell, and it as if it frightened the reign of chaos and old night. All in a moment, through the gloom were seen 10,000 banners rise into the air, with orient colors waving. So, orient colors, that is brilliant colors. It was seen that at an instance, through the darkness, 10,000 banners were raised into the air with bright colors. With them rose a forest huge of spears. So, a forest of spears. They could not be counted, so they were so innumerable, numerous in number. It made a big forest like that, forest of spears. And thronging helms appeared, and serried shields in thick array, of depth immeasurable. So Milton is now describing the weapons that were carried by the fallen angels: spears, helms, shields. Anon they move in perfect phalanx to the Dorian mode of flutes and soft recorders. So the phalanx is a body of heavily armed spearmen arranged in a compact mass. So the Dorian mode. Now here actually Milton is referring to one of the Greek music. There were four types of Greek music: Ionian, Ionian, Lydian, Lyddian, Phrygian, Phrygian, and Dorian, Dorian. And Plato, as you know, the Greek philosopher Plato, who wrote the Republic, he called the Dorian the true Hellenic mode. So the Dorian mode was the severest style of music among the Greeks. So Milton takes up this pagan music and attributes it, gives it to the fallen angels, of flutes and soft recorders, such as raised to height of noblest temper, heroes old arming to battle, and instead of rage, deliberate valor breathed. So recorders were a kind of flute, wind instrument. Now, such as raised, so flutes and soft recorders, such as raised to height of noblest temper, heroes old arming to battle. So the old heroes, the great Greek heroes, who were kind of preparing for battle to the highest pitch. To height means to the highest pitch. And instead of rage, now heroes old means ancient heroes. Actually, the heroes who were instead of rage, being angry, they deliberately they breathed courage, valor, firm and unmoved with dread of death, to flight or foul retreat. They were unmoved, uh, obviously, by thoughts of death or by thoughts of flight. They were not fearful. So let me stop here today. I will continue with my uh, class on Monday.